Hi, I'm Christa Jacobson, head mistress of the Budo Ryu Kai, where we teach authentic ninjutsu and classical samurai bujutsu. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's the ancient martial arts of the ninja and samurai. In today's video, we're going to be discussing how to think like James Bond, 007, and Jason Bourne. Because I run a ninjutsu school, the idea of information, intelligence, stealth, and espionage are common topics within this dojo. Now, because these are very common topics within the dojo, many students go and watch these very popular movies, like the James Bond 007 movie series, as well as the Jason Bourne movie series. Some of the questions that I get from the students who watch those movies are the techniques that we see in the James Bond movies and the Jason Bourne movies, are the techniques that we see them use, are those just modern variations of techniques that we see in traditional ninjutsu training? And from there, the students usually evolve the conversation to, since we're training in traditional ninjutsu, how can we then take these old techniques and apply them to enhance our self-defense training? Although technology and tools have changed over time, the same principles and strategies remain just as useful now as they were hundreds of years ago in Japan. Which is why we're going to be talking about this subject, how to think like James Bond, 007, and Jason Bourne, and how you can look at this philosophy of mindset from these two iconic figures in these popular movies, and how you can take that and apply it to enhance your self-defense training. Now, like the ninja of ancient Japan, James Bond and Jason Bourne are spies. So the job is not combat or how to fight, it's gathering information, intelligence, creating chaos, performing stealth, and carrying out espionage. So learning how to fight like Jason Bourne or how to fight like James Bond isn't fighting in the conventional sense that many see it. So learning how to fight like a spy is going to be much different, because in learning how to fight like a spy, learning how to fight like Jason Bourne, learning how to fight like James Bond 007, you would be learning unconventional tactics, guerrilla tactics, improvised weapons. This is where the common theme of combative training would be. Another common theme that we see in the James Bond 007 movie series and the Jason Bourne movie series is that we see that they're moving through the crowd and they're blending in. In the common day, we use words like gray man techniques, things like this. But nonetheless, James Bond and Jason Bourne, they move through the crowd unseen, they blend in, they are where they're supposed to be. In traditional ninjutsu training, we call this kage no kamae. Some other different arts call it bakemono no jutsu. There's lots of different names of this particular method depending on the style of ninjutsu that you're training in. But nonetheless, this is one of the key components of actual traditional ninjutsu training, learning how to blend in the crowd and move freely into the crowd to gather information. Another thing that we see in the James Bond 007 movie series and the Jason Bourne movie series is that they know how to get information from people. And to do this, you have to be a really good people person. So that's something that the ninja also trained in. And this is something that I think is really good too, because if you're not a good people person, it's very difficult for you to be able to get information. So many people nowadays only communicate with people online. They have no real life people skills, and when they talk to people, they come off in kind of a rude or a hateful way. Well, if you're going to be a spy, you need to be really good at talking to people and being able to gather information and get them to feel comfortable talking to you. In this case, when you see the James Bond movies, the Jason Bourne movies, you see that they can use those skills to talk to people and to persuade them to give enough information so that they have it. This is also a technique that we see in traditional ninjutsu training. Now, another technique that we see in the James Bond 007 movie series, as well as the Jason Bourne, when they are sitting in public places, they always position themselves in a way that they can always get a wider spectrum of the room. One of the more iconic, popular images of this is in the very first Jason Bourne movie, which is Bourne Identity. He finds out that he has amnesia, and he's sitting at a table, and when he does, he positions himself in a place where he can see the whole room, and he's talking to this woman, and he says, you know, I know all the numbers of the license plate out there. You know, I can tell you that the guy behind the bar knows how to handle himself. He has positioned himself in a way not only to see the whole room, but he's already scouted out everything on the outside of the building that they walked in, and he's sit in a place where he can see everything. This particular aspect is really good for situational awareness. Now, I've already made a whole lot of videos on situational awareness. If you've not seen those videos, just go to my playlist and type in situational awareness. I've got a series on that. But situational awareness is huge when you're dealing with real life self-defense and self-protection skills, and it's something that's constantly being used under the radar in all of the James Bond 007 movies as well as the Jason Bourne movies. Now, this next point that I'm going to make is reading body language. Now, reading body language does go along the line of situational awareness, being a people person, making people feel comfortable in talking to you, but you have to be able to learn how to read body language as well. So this, although it is part of that particular skill set, it's a separate skill set in itself, and this is something that we see more prominent in the James Bond 007 movie series, because in the James Bond movies, Bond tends to talk to more people and get them to give up information more freely than, say, Jason Bourne. Jason Bourne tends to be a shadow and just kind of move through society and get the information he needs. Jason Bourne is a really good example of the situational awareness, positioning yourself in a way to gather information, gather intel, get to where you want to be without being seen. Where James Bond tends to be a really good example of being a people person, walking up, talking to the women, talking to different men, being able to sit at the bar and talk to everyone there while having a few drinks. But James Bond is a really good example of being able to read body language and what that body language means, and then from there being a good people person to getting them to open up to then get the information. Regardless of the examples, whether it's James Bond 007 or Jason Bourne, both of these skill sets of situational awareness and then reading body language is definitely something that is detailed and trained in when you're dealing with traditional ninjutsu training. This is also something I think is really relevant and something that you should be learning if you're going to be dealing with true self-defense training, because reading body language, sizing someone up, knowing if they're a threat are key components to realistic, reality-based self-defense. Now, one thing that we see when watching all of the James Bond 007 movies and the Jason Bourne movies is hand-to-hand combat. Now, although spies are not purposely going out to execute a combative mission, their purpose is to gather information. But they're all trained in hand-to-hand combat, self-defense training, and martial arts. The reason for this is if they was to get caught, they would need to know how to handle themselves to get the information back. They're all going to be trained in learning how to fight. So learning how to fight, learning how to punch, how to kick, learn how to defend yourself. These are things that all spies are going to need to know. Obviously, training in weapons training, improvised weapons, things like this are also part of training as a spy. So if you want to learn how to fight like Jason Bourne or how to fight like James Bond, yes, you would be learning hand-to-hand combat, self-defense training, martial arts, weapons training, improvised weapons. All of this would take place because all spies who are gathering information would need to know how to handle themselves in case they got into a combative self-defense situation. Now, I'm not going to go on and talk about martial arts and self-defense training because that's what we talk about a lot on this particular channel. We also talk about weapons training a lot on this channel. But one thing I do want to kind of emphasize with this thought is improvised weapons are an absolute must, because if you're going to be a spy, you're going into some place to gather information, you're not going in with a whole lot of weaponry. You're going in looking like the person that's supposed to be there. So if you're going into a law firm, you're going to look like a lawyer, right? Wherever you're going, if you're going to a hospital, you're going to look like a doctor. So you're not going in with heavy amounts of weapons. So the use of improvised weapons is going to be a key aspect towards training. Now, one of the examples I'd like to give is in the Jason Bourne, the first movie of Jason Bourne, I believe it's Bourne Identity, he got into a kind of a scrap with this individual, and while he was fighting, there was a scene where he grabbed an ink pen and he pulled the top of it off, and he started using the ink pen as a striking improvised weapon or force multiplier within this particular fight, and that is a good example of being able to utilize improvised weapons. But it's not just understanding, hey, I can pick up the pen and use it. It's being trained to use anything around you, to think outside the box and immediately say, I need to grab something, use that to help me protect myself in this situation. And that alone is the key component towards training. Another thing that we see in the James Bond 007 movies and the Jason Bourne movies is that they are highly conditioned. A lot of times people go to martial arts schools and self-defense schools and they just learn techniques, but they don't actually get in condition. Telling you guys up front, if you're not conditioning, constantly conditioning and staying in shape, the chance of being able to utilize any of the skills that you're learning, regardless of the martial art, is slim to none. Truth of the matter is, in a realistic, reality-based self-defense situation, you're in a violent situation, stress goes up, anxiety goes up, fear goes up, all of these things are heightened, and you have to be able to perform. And if you don't know how to handle yourself with your heart rate up, body fatigued, things like this, and you're not in good condition, you're not going to be able to respond well in a heated violent situation. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here is fear. So when you're watching any of the James Bond 007 movies or the Jason Bourne movies, you see that James Bond and Jason Bourne always do well in spite of fear. Now, we can make the argument that both of these characters, they've been on so many missions, they've been in so many situations where fear, anxiety, and stress are really high. They've had to then, go through these situations, and it's because they have so much experience dealing with fear, anxiety, and stress, they tend to be very efficient in those situations. And that is the truest statement ever. But now, how does that relate to your self-defense training? So many times people join martial art dojos and they do self-defense training, and then it gets to learning how to throw someone, how to punch and kick and do a couple sparring matches or kickboxing matches and put yourself in combative situations, and then they quit because of fear. It's kind of ironic. Fear is what gets them in the door to start their training, but fear is usually the number one reason why they leave the dojo also. So fear is this huge component, and when you watch the James Bond movies, the Jason Bourne movies, they're in these situations where fear, anxiety, and stress is so high, but it doesn't get to them. The reason it doesn't get to them is because they have experience in those situations. So how can that reflect into your particular training for self-defense? Don't quit when you're scared. Go through the training. Yes, strength training is going to hurt. Cardiovascular training is going to be hard. Flexibility training is going to be rough. Sparring is going to be difficult. You will be nervous. Grappling is going to be difficult. You will be nervous. You know, all of these things tie into the training. But the more that you do it, the more comfortable you become. And as a true martial artist that are studying traditional ninjutsu and studying self-defense training, you want to be able to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I know that sounds a little off topic or a little weird, but it's just true. You need to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. So there's my video today, how to think like James Bond, 007, and Jason Bourne. Are the techniques that they use modern variations of traditional ninjutsu training, and how can you take those particular principles and strategies and philosophies and apply that to your personal self-defense training? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I do post 2 to 3 videos every single week, so don't forget to go down and subscribe, click the bell, that way you guys get notifications and keep up with everything that we're doing. If you guys are interested in training in authentic ninjutsu and classical samurai bujutsu, check out my website at budoryuninjutsu.com. If you don't live next to one of our schools, you guys can always join the Budo Ryu Kai online ninjutsu dojo and start training with us that way. So thank you guys very much for your love and support. I deeply appreciate it. Until next time, take care, be safe, and good luck in your journey of Budo. Bye.